Hey guys, this is Luke on Sean's channel. Today I'll be showcasing one of my favorite decks of all time, Cyber Dragon. This has since been updated since I last profiled the deck. We got some nice little support, not direct support, but Clockwork Night comes in pretty fucking well in this deck. So let's go. This is a pure Cyber Dragon build. Don't be expecting any other secondary bullshit. This is the real and true Cyber Dragon, the way they are meant to be played, the way the Egyptian gods look down upon Cyber Dragons to be played, so let's fucking get into it. Of course, the main man himself, 3 copies of Cyber Dragon. You already know what this motherfucker does. He's the best card in the whole game. If your opponent controls a monster and you control no monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. 2100 attack, and the fact that you can bring him out using machine dupe on any of your other Cyber Dragon monsters, considering that their names are Cyber Dragon on the field and in the graveyard. It's just great. Definitely run at 3. 3 copies of Core. Core is a great starter for this deck. When it's normal summoned, the mandatory effects that you can add a Cyber Dragon spell trap from your deck to your hand. Core is great because his name is Cyber Dragon while he's on the field or in the graveyard. And the fact that it has 400 attack means it's a great target for machine duplication. So when you activate machine duplication on Core, rather than bringing out 2 copies of Core, you just bring out 2 copies of Cyber Dragon instead. It's definitely run Core at 3. It also has another effect in the graveyard that if only your opponent controls a monster and you control no cards in the field, you can banish Core from your graveyard and you can special summon any Cyber Dragon from your deck and special summon to the field. Definitely run Core at 3 in this deck. Finishing off the Cyber Dragon cards, we run at 3. We run 3 copies of Cyber Dragon Herz. Herz is a level 1 Cyber Dragon monster. It has 100 attack, so of course you can use machine duplication on it to bring out 2 Cyber Dragons. And it also has 2 effects, but you can only activate 1 effect per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can make this card's level become level 5, which is great when we're going into our AA-ZEUS plays using Nova. Which of course Nova is the crazy card that brings us to infinity, which is like the main Cyber Dragon boss monster. Also the fact that Herz is level 1, we can easily link it off with Linkuriboh we play in this deck, which is great to get that secondary effect that we can add a Cyber Dragon from our... when Herz sent to graveyard, we can add a Cyber Dragon from our deck or our graveyard to hand. So for example, if you want to add Cyber Dragon from your deck to your hand, you can absolutely do that. However, since all of your other Cyber Dragon monsters are Cyber Dragon in the graveyard, if Herz is sent to the graveyard with Core in the grave, you can actually add Core from grave to hand. So another reason why Herz is just very good to run at 3, just for those 2 very good effects. You run 2 copies of Nachster. Nachster is a very good Cyber Dragon card, obviously not good enough to be run at 3, but running at 2 is very good in itself. Nachster is very good, kind of like a 1-card combo to go into your Cyber Dragon Seeker, because say you have Nachster and Cyber Dragon in your hand, what you can do is activate Nachster effect, you can pitch a Cyber Dragon, you can special summon Nachster, and when Nachster's on field, target 1 light machine monster in your graveyard with 2100 original attack, and you can special summon it. So you can actually bring back the Cyber Dragon that you just pitched off Nachster to special summon out. Then you know, just link in the Seeker and go from there. This is the one effect that kind of locks you into machines for the rest of the turn, but we're playing Cyber Dragon, so we don't really care about that anyways. Definitely run Nachster at 2 in this build. That does it for the Cyber Dragon monsters in the main deck. We're going to go on to the other monsters. We run 2 copies of Galaxy Soldier. Galaxy Soldier is very good because we mostly use it for our AA-ZEUS plays using Nova. Galaxy Soldier, you can send one of your light monster from your hand to the graveyard and special summon this card from your hand in defense position. And when this card is special summoned, you can add another copy of Galaxy Soldier from your deck and add it to your hand. This is very good because we Nova takes 2 level 5 machine monsters, which is exactly what Galaxy Soldier is. And Galaxy Soldier is also a very good little 2-card combo to go into Nova easily using Galaxy Soldier and Herz. Little 2-card combo to know. What you can do is activate Galaxy Soldier, you can pitch Herz to bring out Galaxy Soldier. Then that'll trigger Galaxy Soldier and Herz. Herz will add Cyber Dragon from your deck to your hand, and Galaxy Soldier add another Galaxy Soldier from your deck to the hand. You can activate Galaxy Soldier again, pitching your Cyber Dragon, and then bring him out again, and then you can use these 2 just to go straight into your Nova. And then of course you can use Nova's bullshit effect that you can detach to bring out your Cyber Dragon again. We'll go more into that later. It's just good to know for now, considering that we're talking about the cards in this current moment. Definitely essential to run Galaxy Soldier at least 2. If you want to go for 3, that's fine, but it can be a bit bricky depending on what you're actually drawing. So running at 2 I find to be the most optimal play. I run 2 copies of Jizukiru, starter throwing Kaiju. Honestly, I mostly ran it at 2 because I've been playing this deck for years at this point now, and I remember when Dragoon was a big problem, I put this guy at 2. Mostly because that you can pretty much search it off of Cyber Repair Plant, which I find to be very, very good. So not only that, it's also just great to have a little bit of fodder when you're going into your Chimeratech Fortress Dragon if you want to Kaiju your opponent's monster for a machine. I find running at 2 to be very, very good, definitely in the situation that I've come in, but if you want to run at 1, that's completely fine, it's completely up to you. Rounding off our monsters with the hand traps now, we just have 3 copies of Ash Blossom. You already know what Ash Blossom does, definitely most versatile hand trap, definitely running at 3. Of course, it can be sided out depending on the matchup as well. Let's go into the spells now. We run 3 copies of Cyber Emergency. Cyber Emergency is our searcher of this deck. It can add any of Cyber Dragon monster from our deck and add it to the hand. Also has another effect that if the activation of this card in its own possession was negated by your opponent's card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can discard 1 card and add Cyber Emergency back to your hand. But you can only activate 1 Cyber Emergency per turn. It's definitely good to run it at 3 in this deck. 1 copy of Cyber Repair Plant. Cyber Repair Plant is very good. If Cyber Dragon is in your graveyard, you can activate 1 of these effects. But if you have 3 or more Cyber Dragons in your graveyard at activation, you can activate both the effects in the sequence. You can only activate 1 Cyber Repair Plant per turn. But since all of your Cyber Dragon monsters are Cyber Dragon in the graveyard anyways, you have no problem having 3 to activate both of these effects in sequence. First one being add 1 light machine monster from your deck to your hand. Then you can target 1 light machine monster that is in your graveyard and shuffle that target into the deck. Running at 1 is completely fine, most optimal, don't run any more than that. 1 copy of Cyber Revsystem. This is special summons 1 Cyber Dragon from your hand or graveyard and it cannot be destroyed by card effects. Running at 1 is great, it can be searched off the core. Cyberload Fusion. I've been playing this deck since this card was expensive as fuck, so it's good to have this reprinted to shit now in Legend Duel Season 2. Cyberload Fusion, you can fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your X deck that has a Cyber Dragon monster as material by shuffling the fusion materials listed on it into the deck from among cards on your field, and that is face up banished cards. But monsters you control cannot attack for the rest of the turn except the card fusion summoned by this. But considering that this is a quick play, you can activate during battle phase, so that doesn't really come up as much of an issue. But Cyberload Fusion really goes in very well, considering that we run 2 copies of Overload Fusion. So since Cyberload Fusion can use monsters that are face-up banished, Overload Fusion is very good. If you Overload Fusion for your Chimeratech Rampage Dragon, and then you have materials banished, also and then this guy goes in for some great attacks during the battle phase. But if you need a little bit extra just to finish him off, you can activate Cyberload Fusion during battle phase, go into another one of your Cyber Dragon monsters, and then pretty much win from game for there. So Cyberload Fusion at 1, Overload Fusion is at 2. Definitely good to run this deck. We are hardcore Cyber Dragon players here. We do not run any of the Cyber Darks, but we still like to run Power Bond, as Zane Truesdale really meant it to be. 2 copies of Power Bond is very good. Power Bond is good for bringing out any of your machine fusion monsters, and when it's brought out with Power Bond, its attack is doubled. Since this is an OTK deck, this is just a very good way to go for the full OTK. Power Bond was made for Cyber Dragons. Definitely run it at least 1 in this deck. You can side it out depending on what your opponent is playing, but I find running at 2 is very, very fun, very good to play. But be very careful because during the end phase you have to take damage equal to the original attack of the monster that you brought out. So Power Bond has a little bit of a down cost, but usually when you use Power Bond, you pretty much you're in it to win it. You've pretty much got the game from there. 3 copies of Machine Duplication. Machine Duplication, honestly you can run this at 2 now. It's not too much of an issue with consistency anymore. So Machine Duplication is very good because you can target 1 machine monster you control with 500 or less attack and special summon up to 2 monsters from your deck with the same name as that face-up monster. So as you know, all of the small Cyber Dragons are known as Cyber Dragon on the field. So if you activate Machine Duplication on say Core for example, you're not bringing out 2 more Cores, you're bringing out 2 Cyber Dragons. Definitely run Machine Duplication at least 2 and you won't regret it. 3 copies of Clockwork Night. This is the new card that I've added to this deck. Clockwork Night is very good because this is what we're using for our Chimeratech Forces Dragon plays. Clockwork Night is a face-up continuous spell and turns all face-up monsters on the field become machine monsters. And then also machine monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense, and machine monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack and defense. But that doesn't really matter depending on the matchup, because honestly with Clockwork Night, when you're activating this, you're mostly using it to go for a Fortress Dragon. So running at 3 is very good. That's why we want to profile this deck again, because that Clockwork Night really made the difference in this deck. 1 copy of Harpie's Feather Duster, just because it's great to destroy spells and trap cards. Definitely running at 1. 1 copy of Raigeki. If you can find the space to run it at 3, definitely run it at 3, because we want to go for the OTK as quickly as possible. But be sure that you activate Raigeki after you splash summon your Cyber Dragon, because your opponent needs to control a monster for you to bring out your Cyber Dragon off its effect. But Raigeki is definitely great to run it at least 1. Running at 3 is definitely good, and it's definitely a lot better than Lightning Storm, I feel. Lightning Storm, you need to control nothing in order to activate it, whereas with Raigeki, you can special summon your Cyber Dragon before you activate it and completely wipe your opponent's field for some good OTK plays. This is a combo deck, so of course we run 1 Call by the Grave. And just rounding off with the traps, we don't run Cybernetic Overflow. The only trap we need is 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. The best hand trap in the game. Definitely run it at 3 if you can. Look, it has Nova on it. This card was made for Cyber Dragons. That does it for the main deck. Let's get on into the extra deck now. 2 copies of Chimeratech Rampage Dragon. Chimeratech Rampage Dragon is fucking insane, especially when it's paired with the likes of Cyber Dragon Seeger, just because Seeger can boost up Rampage Dragon and really go in for the OTK. So Rampage Dragon, when it's brought out, you can destroy spell and traps up to the number of materials used for its summon. So it's a good way of kind of like getting rid of problematic cards your opponent has in their back row or field zone. Also, one thing I would say about Rampage Dragon is, since it's a dark, you can bring it out with your Overload Fusion as well. And also, once per turn, you can send up to 2 light machine monsters from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, for each monster sent to the graveyard, this card gains 1 additional attack during each of the battle phase. So this card can attack 3 times during the battle phase if you activate that effect, and if you boost it up with Seeger, then you're pretty much going in with 3 attacks with 4200 attack monster, which I find to be fucking insane. Definitely run Rampage at least 2. Because of extra Clockwork Night support that we got, running Chimeratech Forces Dragon at 2 is definitely a lot better now. Run it at 2 just because it's a great way to kind of like wipe your opponent's field, especially with Clockwork Night, and if you're going against a machine deck anyways, even better. Because Chimeratech Forces Dragon is brought out not by the use of polymerization on your fusion spells, special summoned by using Cyber Dragon and 1+ machine monsters on the field, on any side of the field. So that can be your own or your opponent's. Chimeratech Megafleet Dragon. This card is decent enough, but I mostly use it just because it gets rid of, you can use it to contact fuse, and you can use Cyber Dragon plus 1+ monster in the extra monster zone. So if your opponent has a problematic monster in the extra monster zone, you can just easily contact fuse it off for Megafleet. Because we run Power Bond, and I'm a sucker for Zane Truesdale, I like to run Cyber Twin Dragon. It's very great if you're using it with Power Bond to go up to a 5600 attack monster that can attack twice. It is fucking great. And also the fact that your Cyber Dragon monsters are known as Cyber Dragon on the field. If you Power Bond with Twin Dragon, you can use some of your smaller guys on the field too. I run 1 copy of Cyber End Dragon. You can bring it out by using either Cyberload Fusion or anything else like that, just for other ways to bring it out. But also it's good to note that Nova has another effect that if it's destroyed by your opponent's card effect while he's face up on the field, you can special summon 1 of your machine fusion monsters from your extra deck, just ignoring summoning conditions. I like for Cyber End Dragon to be that monster that we bring out just because it's a good 4000 attack monster that inflicts piercing damage. Also, it's just a classic card as well, but some people like to run Invoke Mechaba as well, which is completely fine if you want to go down that road. But I find Cyber End Dragon to be a very classic card that we just want to bring out off of that effect. Speaking of Nova, we run him at 2 copies in this deck. Nova is great, it's brought out by 2 level 5 machine monsters, that being your Cyber Dragon or even Galaxy Soldier. Nova has some really good effects. The one that I mentioned earlier about bringing out a fusion monster if he's destroyed, but also the effect that you can actually detach one material from this card and target one Cyber Dragon that's in the graveyard, and you can special them out of the field. And also Nova has a secondary effect that it's a quick effect that you can actually banish one Cyber Dragon face up on the field, and then Nova gains an additional 2100 attack, which can pretty much just doubles his attack to go in for big damage if needs be. Not only that, we mostly use Nova because he's great for overlaying into our Cyber Dragon Infinity. Infinity is definitely a really great card and one of the best Cyber Dragon cards there is. Pretty much the only way we go into him with this deck is because of Nova, because otherwise it takes 3 level 6 light machine monsters, which we just don't have in this deck. Nova gains 200 attack for each material that is on it. Infinity can suck up monsters, attack resistant monsters your opponent controls as well, which is great because Infinity is also an Omni negate once per turn by detaching material, negate the activation and destroy a card as well. So definitely run Infinity at least 2 in this deck. Speaking of great XYZ monsters, Zeus. You already know what Zeus does. You can bring him out with an XYZ monster you attack with this turn. Zeus has an effect that's not even once per chain, that you can detach 2 materials from this card and then pretty much nuke the field except for Zeus himself. Running him at 1 in this deck never goes astray. Finishing off the extra deck with our links, 1 copy of Almiraj. Almiraj can be brought out with one normal summon monster with 1000 or less attack, most like its core in most cases. Also has a quick effect, you can tribute this card, target 1 monster you control, it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects for the rest of the turn. So Almiraj at 1 is definitely very good. I also run 1 copy of Linkuriboh. Linkuriboh is very good because if we need some protection, and also the fact that we can use Linkuriboh to link off our Herz and get Herz's graveyard effect. Linkuriboh is definitely good to run out 1 in this deck. And finally, Cyber Dragon Seeger. Seeger is definitely worth running at least 1 in this deck. He's brought out with 2 machine monsters including a Cyber Dragon, and this card's name becomes Cyber Dragons on the field or in the graveyard, and then during each battle phase, if his card is not declared an attack, quick effect, you can target 1 machine monster you control and it gains 2100 attack for the rest of the turn. Also, neither player takes damage from battles involving Seeger directly as well. So Seeger at 1 is very good, as I mentioned earlier. If you're using it with your Rampage Dragon, it's very good to go into a 4200 attack monster that can attack 3 times that turn. That about does it for that. Now let's finish it off with the side deck. Cause, you know, Kashtira is fucking big in this format. 3 copies of Lancea is very good. You can shotgun it during the standby phase, and then during the turn discard tribute from your hand. Neither player can banish cards. Lancea is very good to run the side. 3 copies of Lava Golem. Lava Golem is another good little Kaiju that gets rid of 2 monsters on your opponent's side of the field. For this guy, and then it has effect during the during your standby phase. The controller's card takes 1000 damage, which can be very good considering Cyber Dragons really like to go for the OTK, so just more damage on your opponent's life points is never a bad thing with this deck. 3 Cosmic Cyclones. We like Cosmic Cyclone because it's good against back row decks. Running at 3 on the side never goes astray. I know I keep talking about Cyber Dragons being the deck that's really good for OTKing, but Evenly Match is just too good to ignore playing in the side deck. Evenly Match is a good sort of board wipe that forces your opponent to banish cards face down on their field until they control the same number of cards you control. It only activates during the end of battle phase, and if you control no monsters, you can activate it from a hand. Evenly Matched at 3 is very good for the side deck. It can be a very good unexpected tech option to have in this deck if your opponent's not expecting it. Finally, rounding off the side deck, we run 3 copies of Royal Decree. Find Royal Decree to be very good. It's definitely an underrated card. It just has a simple effect that it negates all other trap effects on the field, but you've no idea how crippling this is to labyrinths or trap trick decks unless you see it played in action. Royal Decree is definitely very good. Definitely underrated. I recommend playing it inside. Of course, it doesn't apply for every deck, but the decks that it does apply to, it can be very, very crippling to them. So that does it for the deck. That's just a small little updated version of my Cyber Dragon deck that we profiled about 7 months ago at this point now. Deck's definitely come a long way. It's definitely getting only getting better. I recommend playing it for anyone who wants to. This is a very good build. It's fairly budget friendly as well, minusing all the side deck cards. So it's definitely a good one if you want to kind of like get back into the game, or if you just love Cyber Dragons and want to test around with new builds. I definitely recommend this one. Please let me know what you think. I know there's plenty of other ways to play Cyber Dragons. Let me know your favorite in the comments. And until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.